Nice. Great. Okay, so welcome to week 4. That should say day 2, sorry. The day-to-day. Once again, housekeeping before we start. We're recording the session. We already started. If you don't feel comfortable being recorded, please disable your video. Please go on mute unless we are having a discussion and you'd like to speak. And then if you have any questions, write them in the chat. So last week, I know some of you asked if we could meet one-on-one. I think since there are so many of you, it might just be best to have an office hours session. So next Thursday at this same time, we'll have an office hour session. You can submit a question to our Google form here. I'll put it in the chat. And you'll be sent a Zoom link only if you fill out the form. But if you can't make it, it'll be recorded. So if you submit a question, but you can't make this time, we'll still answer the question during the session. We'll go through as many questions as we can, and we'll record it and send that out. So feel free to submit your questions there. There's a section where you can submit like a screenshot or a photo. So if there's like a particular kind of map that you want to make and you want to upload an example of that, you can put it there. If there's like an error code or something that's happening in your ArcGIS account, you can take a screenshot of that and upload that there too. So I want to start with a little bit of a discussion. Was anyone able to find a data set for their project? And then was anyone able to actually create a map in the past week? And if you want to share your screen and show us, that would be great. If you haven't been able to find a data set, does anyone have an idea of the kind of data set that they're looking for still? Or the kind of data that they are hoping to collect? Bernice?
Yeah, so I have a data set, but I created in the past week. It's not loading right now, but once I open it up, maybe I can share it. But basically, I'm focusing mine on noodles, and I extracted the microplastics one, and then I just removed some of the categories so I can get the one that I wanted.
Cool, great. So why don't I call on Zarella and then Bernice when you're ready. I'll stop sharing my screen. Zarella?
Yeah, I was looking for some sort of like map or data set on acid rain, but because that's not a super prevalent like issue that people talk about a lot right now, I couldn't find any. So I was wondering if maybe you had any suggestions or if we could have like a Google Google Classroom thread of like places that have multiple data sets.
Yeah, that's a great question. That is an interesting data set. I wonder if there is some kind of like satellite imagery data set that does that picks up on some kind of precipitation in some kind of measure. But yeah, I'll definitely start a thread in the Google Classroom. We'll have a link to some satellite imagery resources and then some other sort of data collections. But yeah, you can start with SDGs today if you haven't already looked through there for some data sets. And then you can also look through the Esri Living Atlas if you haven't already too. Bernice, are you ready?
Yeah, and just for clarification, do you want me to share the data set of like all the numbers and stuff or the map itself?
Just the map itself.
Okay, so let me share my screen. It's still loading, but basically I focused on nurdles and I got this from Nurdle Patrol, not the microplastics. And sorry, it's still loading.
No worries.
Before it combined longitude and latitude, so I had to split it up with Excel so I'm able to get it. And it basically just shows like the nurdles throughout. Nurdles are a type of microplastics and are not talked about enough. So that's something that I plan on focusing about in my story map.
Cool, thank you. What kind of information is in that data set? Is there like the amount or is it just like the locations of where they were found?
Yeah, so it has the amount. I created this notes thing on the side. I forgot what it's called, but basically when you click on it, it tells you the time and then the date and also the numbers.
Nice, cool. Great. Shreyan?
Yeah, so this is not regarding like showing my map because I wasn't able to like finish it yet. But
Yeah, no problem.
what I would like to answer the first question. I just forgot the question. What was the question again?
No problem. It's what data set have you found or a data set that you're trying
Yeah,
to
so I found this one where it would show the microplastic concentration in rivers and lakes in different countries. So I've been able to use that because I'm focusing on how microplastics are concentrated in the lakes and rivers in India and how that affects human beings and how they get there.
Nice, that's great. Were you able to start working on the map in ArcGIS at all or?
I mean, I got everything set, but I didn't implement anything yet. I'm
Okay.
going to try today.
No worries. Cool. So I think there's a question in the chat about the office hours form. Aryaman says, what if our question is more conceptual? Like, should I include this idea in my story map, for example, rather than technical? That's a good question. I think if you have a specific question about your story map and your topic, that's totally fine. I think it might just depend on how many of those that we get and how many that we can fit into answering in the session. But if there's sort of like a grouping of questions that we're getting, then we can sort of answer all of those together. But you don't have to provide documentation like a screenshot. But if it doesn't say that it's optional and it says it's required, let me know and I can fix it in the form. Does anybody else want to talk about their project or their map? Gianna?
I hope to find a data set that shows like where sewer system, like sewer water enters like our natural waterways. And then I hope to find like the concentration of microplastics at each of the sewer systems. And that's kind of what my project is focused on, like things that we could do to solve that.
Yeah, that's a That's a good question. If you can't find, one thing that I'll say is for the microplastics part of that data set, you might not be able to find like microplastics at the specific sewer sites, but you might be able to filter out a different microplastics data set like the one that we were working on just for the areas that you're looking at. So that might be one thing too. Does anybody else want to talk about the project? Alay?
Yeah, thank you. So I actually tried finding some data set about water scarcity, but I actually couldn't find anything. Is there any suggestion or advice could you give me?
Yeah, I think there are a couple data sets that we know of that have to do with droughts and precipitation. So maybe in the Google Classroom too, I'll add some of the relevant data sets. But that's a great data set and topic to have.
Thank you.
No worries. Shreyansh?
Yeah, so one of the databases, for example,
Shreyansh? Oh, yeah.
yeah, for example, the project which me and one other person would be making is we would basically be looking at the number of ships present in the sea and all of the vibrations which occur from that fish, how it affects the aquatic ecosystem. So one of the databases I found was basically a vessel database, which basically included all of the ships which were currently at sea. And
Yeah.
then I could maybe find another database, like I'm still finding it right now, in which we could look at the different impacts the aquatic biosystem, like aquatic system is having, and we could maybe compare both of the databases to see where there's like a lot of ships also and where aquatic ecosystem is getting affected like at a large scale.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, I think in the Google Classroom, it would be great if you could also share that data set. I think if everyone shares the data sets that they found, that would be great. I would also love to look at that vessel data set. I think we have been looking for one that's at least open and global. So that's an interesting sort of idea to have. Okay, great. So I think in general, all of your projects sound really interesting. The one thing that I'll say is it would be great if your data set is so large and global, if you could find a way to sort of narrow that down to like 1 or 2 locations and maybe compare between some specific locations, just so that your project is a little bit more narrow. But we'll also go through your project ideas this week, and we'll have some feedback for you by the end of this week, we're hoping. So let me share my screen again. Okay, so we have a few things to show you today. Here are a few of our goals from our data set discussion. If you can't find your own data set and you'd like to collect your own, maybe in your area, do some kind of more localized project, Miriam will be showing you all how to use Survey 123 in ArcGIS, which is a way to collect data. And then I'll go through the different kinds of apps that you can make with the web maps that you're making in ArcGIS, and then I'll show you one of the specific app types, which is a dashboard. Miriam, are you ready to do a Survey 123 demo?
Can we do that last? Because I'm helping some of the students with finding data sets in the chat. So.
Sure, that sounds good. Okay, so let's go through the different web apps that you can make in ArcGIS Online. So when you have your web map open, there's an option on the left side to create an app. And then you'll get all of these different kinds of types of apps that you can choose from. So I'll go through the ones that I think are most important to look at, or the ones that I think you'll probably use the most. And that's sort of these first four. So instant apps, experience builder, story maps, which you've heard about from the Esri team, and then dashboards. So instant apps are really simple, no code templates where you can just share your map sort of as is, or if you want to create some kind of interactivity, whether it be like a slider tool where you can compare two data sets, or sort of like a timeline, then you can create an instant app. I'll also have examples of each of these too. You can also use the experience builder. So this is sort of a more complex version of an instant app. It's what I would consider like a low code web app developer. There are also templates, but there's also a lot more complexity that you can do. You can like add data sets and sort of connect different what they call widgets, so different tools that you can have your user use in your app. You can connect your data sets to that, and you can connect all the widgets to each other. So it's a little bit more complicated. If you were making sort of like a standalone app with a lot of interactivity, I would say that we would be focusing on Experience Builder, but since we're focusing more on a sort of research project with solutions, we'll be using story maps and instant apps and dashboards because I think they're a little bit more simple and easier to add into a story map for a nice story. So then there's also ArcGIS story maps, which again, you've heard from Esri. This is where you'll be presenting your projects. And then you can also create a dashboard. So dashboards are the type of app that I was showing with the microplastics, where there are different filtering options. You can have like the legend docked on the side so that people can see that easily. And some of them you can also sort of have your users select between the different layers. And then there are also like graphs and different statistics that you can pull out from your data set and add to your dashboard. So the last two that are in the screenshot here, web app builder and configurable apps, we won't be talking about those because they are sort of the older versions of these other apps. So I think the web app builder is the old version of the experience builder. And then configurable apps is sort of the older version of instant apps. So I would say to just focus on instant apps and dashboards, but if you want to look at examples of experience builders and maybe create one for a different project, then you are free to do that. So these are some examples. This is an instant app that has a slider tool, and it has different images from different dates. So when you slide the tool over, it sort of toggles between 2023 and 2024. That's a kind of instant app that you can make. This is an experience builder that I was working on a couple years ago. It's not, oh, you can't really see it, but it says it's not yet published. But you can see that there's a little bit more complexity. There's like there's a legend, and then there's some other tools for searching and turning on layers and things like that. There's an example of one of our story maps. And then dashboard. So this is earthquakes. And you can see that there are different widgets. There's like the magnitude for that earthquake. There's a graph of the latest 72 hours and things like that. So I'll go through a demo. So I think one thing that might be a little bit confusing is sort of the layers of there's the layer, there's a web map, and then there's an instant app. So here we have our feature layer. So this is our data set that we're mapping. It's running a little bit slow, sorry. So this is the marine microplastics data set that we've been mapping throughout the summer. That's a standalone layer and you can add it to a map. And that's what we did last week. We added the layer to this map. And then there are a few different ways that you can create an app out of your map. And we suggest creating an instant app for all of your web maps that you want to sort of have a link to that's standalone, because if you just share this link or even like the map viewer link, the person that you're sharing the map with will have to open it in ArcGIS and in the map viewer. But if you create an app, then you can sort of just have a link to that and they can see your map as a standalone, as its own like app. So there are a few different ways. The first is from the web map item detail page. If you go to create web app, you can see all of those different options that I was talking about. And then maybe I'll just go through and show you what these look like. As I mentioned before, ArcGIS really tries to make it easy for you. They ask a lot of questions along each step. So you can see this says like search for tools and settings. It tells you all the different ways that you should interact with this web page to get the type of instant app that you want. And it sort of like goes through all of the different parts of this, but I'll just show you here on the left. You can answer a few questions about what you want your app to do. So the first question is, what is your goal for the app? If you want to just sort of share your map as is, I would say just like showcase one or more maps with tools. What do you want to display? A web map, a web scene, or multiple maps and scenes. I'll just say like a web map. Does the map include an image service? You probably won't be using image services, but if you find an imagery data set that you want to use, then we can talk about it a little bit more in the office hours section. I'm going to say no. And then it's nice and they filter out all of these different templates for you to choose from. You can even like preview them. So if you open up a specific web map, you can see what the template will actually give you with your map. So this is the map from last week, and then you can see if it was just this simple web app, it would just be this whole thing where you can just interact with the map and things like that. And then going to dashboards. And I think one thing to note is that in your story map, you don't have to make an instant app to put the map that you're making into it. So I would say you can make an instant app again, only if you're sharing it as like a standalone app, but you can just put it in your story map as it is. But one thing that we like to do is we like to make dashboards and embed that in our story maps. Just because we think that it's a nice way to have your users sort of look at a data set at the forefront and be able to interact with it. So this is the page for making a dashboard. Again, on the left hand, there are all of the different things that you can make. So there are a couple ways that you can add an element. You can add element here, and then there are these little like plus signs where you can decide where to add the element. So the elements are all of the different like graphs and statistics and things that you can add to your dashboard. One thing that we like doing is adding a header. So I'm going to add an element here and then click on header. And then here you can have like a title. You can add a subtitle. So if I want to say that this data set is from NOAA, I can say that there. There are a lot of different options. So you can have it in the same line. You can put it below. You can change the text color, the background color, and things like that. One thing that you can also do is there are these lines on the side. That's a menu bar. And you can change like what the links are to like on this header. If you go to menu items on the left, the default is having this like sign out button, but I just turn it off because we share our dashboards widely and we don't expect our users to like have to sign into an ArcGIS online account to be able to access it. So I think that's mostly what that sign out item is for. And then if you click on add, you can add a URL. You can like change the label of it and then have the destination. So if I wanted to do NOAA microplastics, if I wanted to add sort of like this information link, I can say microplastics information in my label, and then it'll show up on this menu bar here. And then when people click on it, it'll open a new web page and open that up. So that might be a good way to sort of keep track of all of your underlying data sets and data sources and things like that. But also if you are sharing the dashboard itself, you can also just have a link to your story map in case you're sharing just the dashboard and you want people to be able to see your story map too. So I'll just keep adding some elements. When you add an element, you can have them be separate from each other, or you can group them. So one thing that I like to do is I like to group the legend with this map. And then you'll do that by pressing down the shift button, and then you can see that all of these like plus signs turn from blue to green. So this is without the shift button. This is blue, so it's just making it sort of like a standalone element on your dashboard, but if I hold the shift button, I can group it to this map. So I just want to add the legend here. And then it's attached to the map. For all of the elements besides the header, if you hover over where they meet, you can sort of arrange like how big and how small you want each of the elements to be. And then I'll just keep going. An element. So I'm gonna put a chart, a serial chart on the bottom as a standalone set. So when you add an element that has to do with data, it'll open up this little window where you can select where you want your data to come from. So I want my chart to be based off the microplastics layer. So it knows that the microplastics map is already in this dashboard, and then you can choose the layer that's in there. So I'm going to choose marine microplastics. If you ever want to change the data source, you can change it here. That same window will just show up. You can add some filtering if you want to just filter out some parts of that data set or not. It has categories from. So the categories are the x-axis. I know that my data set has multiple rows for the same date. So I'm choosing grouped values so that I can have all of the dates that are within my data set be in the x-axis. Category field date. And there's a lot of data, so it's gonna take a while. And then you can see it populates this chart with all of the different years. So a couple important things: if your data set date field isn't recognized as a date, so you can see like in this drop down, if I scroll down to date, it has this little like calendar icon. So that's how I know that ArcGIS knows that it's a date field. And then this parse dates option automatically turns on, but sometimes your date might be like spelled out. So it might be a string, which means this icon will say ABC, or it might be like just a series of numbers or something like that. So if it is not recognizing it as a date, then you can click on this parse dates option, and then it lets your ArcGIS dashboard know that the field that you are choosing is a date. So minimum period, this is sort of like where they can group all of the things on your x-axis. So I know that this is daily data because it has the specific date, but because it spans from a very long time ago, I think this might be, yeah, it starts in like the 1970s, all the way to 2023. I just want to group it by month because if it's by the specific date, it might be a little too hectic there. You can also do some fun things by like splitting by field. So if your data set has, if there are like multiple series that you want to add onto here, you can split it up. So for example, if I wanted to split up this chart by the different oceans, you can see that like the green is the Pacific Ocean, and then the blue is the Atlantic Ocean. And there aren't many in the other oceans, but you can see that there's like the dark blue is the Arctic Ocean. So you can split up your chart that way. And then for the statistic, for this, I think that I just want to show how many sampling sites are within each ocean and for each month. So I'm just going to keep the statistic as the count of each of the features within that category or that date. And then you can go through all of these other options. It's basically just similar to how you would format a chart within Excel. It's just all of these different options. There's like text color. You can toggle the legend on and off. So if you do end up splitting your data set by a certain field, you can turn your legend on, and then it'll show like what the different colors mean. And then you can also see that by default, it has these like giant dots, but because there are so many months, it looks a little bit hectic. So in the series button, you can change like the colors of all of your lines. You can change the data points. So usually I kind of just turn them off, or I leave them on and I make them really small. And then there are also like different options for if you want, when you like hover over a data point, you can see like the day and then the statistic that you're showing. But you can also like turn that off if you want. So you can see I turned it off, and now when I hover over any of these points, nothing shows up. If you have a chart that doesn't have as many points as this one, you can label each of the points. So I'm not going to turn this on because it's going to try to label every point, and that's going to be pretty, it's going to take a while and it's going to be pretty hectic on this chart. So that's that. If you don't want to sort of select your own colors, there's this button called Apply Colors, and you can sort of go through these different color schemes and it'll like choose colors for you. So let's see. I think I liked the default one. And then even if the ones that are like the default colors, if you want to change them up, you can change them. So I'll just keep it like that, and then that's done. And then again, you can see that these two items are grouped, so there's not really like a space in between them. But in between this group and this chart, you can see that there's like a little bit of space in between. And then again, I can sort of like change how big I want these things to be. Another element that we like adding is an indicator box, which is basically just like a statistic that you pull out from your data set that you want to showcase. So I'll add it there. The one that I chose was indicator, so add element, indicator, and then I'll choose that layer. And then it's sort of a similar pop-up to when you're formatting the chart, where you can, if you're deciding on a different layer, you can change the layer, you can filter out your data set, you can choose the specific statistic. You can also choose a specific feature. But we usually just do like a statistic of the whole data set. So to statistic count, again, I'll just do a count of all of the different sampling sites. And then in this indicator portion, you can change the text that's on the top and the bottom. So if I want to say something about this number, I'll just say 15,000 microplastic sampling sites or something like that. There are also fun options to like add an icon, which is kind of fun. Let's see if there's one that I can find quickly that might be interesting. Maybe like one of these like water ones. I know that's supposed to be like temperature, but yeah, there are all these different icons that you can play with, and then again, you can change the like different colors and things like that. If you're planning on adding a lot of different elements, under the general tab, you can change the name of it just so that you can keep track of it. So this is all internal and just for like your own sort of organization. So I'm going to say microplastics stat and then done. And then again, I can change, I can change like how big I want it. If you want to rearrange things too, what you can do is you can hover over, and then on the top left corner, there are these different options. You can change the settings, you can duplicate it, you can delete it. And then the first one is to drag it. So you can click on it and then sort of like rearrange all of these different things. So the last thing that I'll show you is how to add like a filter. I'll go to add element, and then in the header, there's these different kind of selector tools that you can use. We usually use the category selector, but I've also been using the date selector recently. So maybe I'll just do the date selector to give you an idea of what this element can do. So you can change the label, select a date. I'm just going to keep that as default. I'll say that there are, the type are like the way that dates are shown in your data set. So you can define your own like specific dates. If there are like a few standout dates in your data set, you can define those yourself. But I like to do like the date picker. So I'll just do a single date. So when you go to the drop down, it gives you this calendar, and then you can choose whatever date you want. The default, since I know this data set stops at 2023 for now, I'm just going to keep the default as that. Under actions is where you decide what this filter does. So you can see it says when selection changes. So when your user selects a date, you can filter out all of these different things. So you can click filter the map. It'll ask you like what the field is that has that same date for each of these. I'm just going to go through and do that and click on that. So another thing is for the date, it's whatever date is selected as the default, it will automatically filter out your whole map. So you can see that it's already filtered out, like there was no collection on this date. So you can see like it says 0 and then all the points are gone. But if I choose a different date, let's see. And in 2015, so I can do 2015. I'll do that. And then you can see that there were only 2 sampling sites on that date, and the map is filtering out those 2 sites. I think for this data set, it might be better if instead of a single date, it was a range. So you can do like from this date until this date, and then change the different like default options. So now that I made the default from like the beginning of the data set until today, then all of the points should show up again. So those are kind of the basics of the dashboard making. I know that it can be a lot and there's like so much that you can add. But I think starting with like a chart, a statistic, and then a filter, and then making sure that like your legend is on here too. I think those are good places to start. Once you are starting with your story map and you've sort of like decided on the kind of theme and the colors that you want, you can also change that on this dashboard. So if I go to theme, they have some like pre-selected themes for you. So you can sort of go through and see like which one might be best for your data set. I kind of like this blue one since it's oceans. You can also just like customize that. So I can click on custom theme and then change all of these like different colors for the different elements and things like that. But that's the basics of dashboards. Once you have this done, you can save it, and then if you go back to your content, your dashboard will be saved there. You can click on the item detail page and then open dashboard, and then you can share this link. And you can also add this link to your story map. And then again, just making sure if you are trying to share it widely that all your share settings are set to whatever sharing level you want. So if you and your group members are still working on things, you can just set it to organization for now. And if you have any questions or anything like that, you can set it to organization and then send us a link and we'll also be able to access it. But if you want to just share it publicly, you can click on everyone and share it there. So that's creating instant apps. We have time for maybe 1 or 2 questions before Miriam has a demo on survey 1, 2, 3. Gianna?
So if I want to use a data set, like I found one online, but it's
Mhm.
not like a sheet, it's just like a graph.
Mhm.
So I'm kind of integrating that data into a Google Sheets.
Mhm.
So then in order to like upload it onto GIS, do I just like download the Google Sheets and then upload the data and that would work?
Yeah,
Okay, thank you.
yeah, no problem. And then as you're going through and sort of experimenting with your story maps and your maps and your dashboards, if you have a question, again, we'll have the office hours session next Thursday. Miriam, are you ready to do a demo on Survey 123?
Sure, thanks, Anella. And maybe before we start talking about Survey 123, I can address some of the questions that I'm getting in the chat. So let me share my screen and just, let's see. Hopefully you can see that. So a lot of the topics that you guys have been asking about are available on our platform. So I just wanted to let you know where you can find either the ArcGIS layer that you can work with or the underlying data so that you can start from scratch if that's what you wish to do. So if we click on any of the data sets here, you'll see that there are 4 tabs at the top. Actually, let me go back. So this is basically where you find all of the data sets that we have. Sometimes we have data sets listed under archived data sets. So these are data sets that are not being updated anymore, but they can still be useful for your project. So check out this tab as well in case you don't find what you're looking for on the first tab. So when you click on a data set, you see these 4 tabs show up. So this is where you kind of see the map and the data visualization. The About section just has some information about the data set. The metadata provides very detailed information about the data set, the methodology, how the data is collected or computed. And then the last tab is where you can access the data. So if you go to the link under ArcGIS products, that's where you can access the ArcGIS layers. If you want to access the data in the format that the data provider is sharing, then you can click on this link and it'll take you to their website and you can download the data directly from there. So that's how you can access either the ArcGIS layers or the data that's available on our platform. I also shared a couple of other links in the chat. So you can look through the Living Atlas, you can do a Google search. So honestly, what I do is I just use keywords about a topic. So for example, if I'm looking at plastic waste in Indonesia, I'll just type and search plastic waste Indonesia data set, and then a list of things will pop up and I'll go through and see which ones are relevant to the work that I'm doing. Something else that I do that you can try out is sometimes you'll find a lot of data providers and researchers promoting their data sets on social media. So I've come across a lot of data sets on LinkedIn and Twitter. Again, I just do like a keyword search and then I see the posts that pop up with, the topic and data sets, and I look through and see if I can find anything that I need. So you could potentially use social media to look for data sets as well. And something that I wanted to mention about the projects, we might have a little bit of time next week to talk about it in more detail, but just something to consider. I think I saw some questions about just adding a screenshot of data or a data visualization. So if you look at some of the criteria, I think this is available in Google Classroom. We're going to use a set of criteria to review your final projects and your story maps. So one of it is data visualization. So we want to see you use the skills that you're learning in terms of either creating a map, doing analysis, creating a dashboard. So, in some instances where perhaps the data is not open and available and it's very relevant to your project, you might need to take a screenshot. Otherwise, we do want to see you utilize these skills in your final projects. And just a friendly reminder that we're also, as the title of the program suggests, we're really excited to hear about your solutions. So if you've identified a problem, you've used data and your analysis to kind of showcase perhaps what some of the challenges are, where some of the gaps are. We're also really excited to hear about what solutions you're proposing, either, you know, for you as an individual to take on, or your community, or, you know, your city. So don't forget to incorporate that as you're thinking and developing your project as well. Okay, so survey 1, 2, 3. I would say sometimes, you know, you might look for a data set, you might not find something that you're looking for, or perhaps your project is very much focused on, you know, a particular topic specific to your community. So perhaps the data isn't available and the data is something that you need to collect yourself for your project. So there are different tools out there that you can use to collect data. And since we're already working with a bunch of ArcGIS tools and software, we can also take advantage of the Survey 123 app that's available through ArcGIS Online. So basically, it's a kind of digital survey that you can use and customize to collect information. So for example, let's say if you're trying to map plastic pollution density by, you know, a river that is near your residence, and you want your community members or your family to kind of document the location where they see like plastic waste density, or perhaps characteristics of the type of plastic waste that they see. You can add questions to this survey and have them respond to it and collect all of that information and use that for your project as well. So basically the app looks like this. So when you see this icon, Survey 123, you can click on it and basically it'll take you to a page. Once you click kind of start or draft a new survey, you'll see a page that looks like this. And let me move this thing up here. Great. Okay. So I would say, so you'll probably, oops. Let's go here. So this is basically the design tab. That's where you can actually start creating your survey. So it's pretty easy in that you just drag and drop whatever you need. So let's say if you're asking a question that, let's say you want to know their name. So it's not a lot of text. It's just a single line text. You basically drag and drop it there. And then here is where you can ask your question, like, what is your name? And you'll see that it'll pop up here. And then if you want to add like additional description or context, you can add that here. And basically, that's how you add a question to your survey. Let's say if you want to like collect someone's email, you can like add that here as well. Oops. Let's do that. And then, you know, you can ask a question like, what is your email? You can also do, if you want to provide some of the options for them to select for a question that you have. So if you want them to select like multiple answers to a question, you also have that option here. So you add your question here, and then you can add, let's say you want to ask like what kind of plastic they have observed. So is it like a water bottle? Is it like a food container? So those are all options that you can add here. If you want to give them the option of other, that's something that you can also enable. And then you can also customize kind of what it looks like as well. So you can play around with that and see which one you like better. So I would encourage you to kind of go through all the different options. There's also like, you can add, if you want them to like rank something, that's also an option. If you want them to actually map the location of something that they've observed, you can also incorporate that. So basically it would allow them to either, you know, zoom in on, let's see, I don't think it's going to work in the, oops. Here, but like they can either search it, or once this is published, they can zoom in and, map the location as well. So there are a lot of different options that you can use for your survey. And basically you can also, this is where you can like customize whether you want them to like map a point or maybe draw a polygon or highlight like an area. So these are all things that you can customize under the Edit tab. And then you can also customize the appearance of your survey. So if you want to, use one of the themes that's available, I think you can also kind of edit and try to customize and perhaps upload photos or use different colors that you want for the design of the survey itself. And then you can also customize. So once, the participants have submitted their data and completed the survey, you can also customize, the messaging here. So if you want to like include your email and say, if you have any further questions, you can contact me at whatever, or just leave it as is. So you have a lot of options in terms of just creating a survey that's very specific to the kind of data that you need to collect, and customize it and design it in a way that fits your project. And so always remember to save it, and then before you actually publish it, so it won't be available or accessible publicly if you don't publish it. You can always preview it to see what it looks like before you publish it. And then once you publish it, it'll give you the link that you can share with those who are going to participate in your survey. So I'm also going to show you, this is like an old survey, so I want to show you kind of what it looks like once people have already submitted data or participated in the survey. So this is kind of the overview page. It gives you some, information about the participation of the survey, and how many people participated and responded. So it's just very kind of high level overview of the survey response. And then if we go to analyze, this will kind of give you an overview of the responses that were submitted. So you can view it in like different formats. You can see kind of different tables, and it provides you with some basic analysis where you can kind of quickly review the participation and the responses that were submitted. And you can also, like, if you really like this and just want to keep this for your own record or something, you can also print these visualizations as well. And then the data tab is where you can kind of look through every response, and it has a lot more detailed information. You can export it as a CSV file. So if you want to, keep that for your records, or maybe go through and clean it up and then, visualize it, you can download it in different formats. And again, you see kind of basically the location where all the participants submitted their data from. But this is, at least in the context of a lot of the work that we do, it's really helpful to always kind of export it as an Excel spreadsheet so that we can look through the responses and analyze the information. And yeah, so I would say it's a really great tool that you can use to collect data, and then use that data to, do your analysis for your final project. And I think what you can do in terms of different languages, it's compatible with different languages. So if you want to like type up your survey, and I think they might already have like some languages available, like Spanish and I think French and other languages, but you can always kind of prepare the questions in your native language and use that for your project as well. There's another platform that I wanted to introduce you to, in case this might be relevant to any of your projects. And I think one of us probably mentioned this early on in the program, and that's OpenStreetMap. So I'm sure you're all familiar with Wikipedia. And so this is kind of the Wikipedia of geospatial information in terms of infrastructures and facilities and buildings. So anything that needs to be georeferenced, that's something that you can find here. So all you need, I mean, if you're just viewing, some of the activities that are ongoing through OpenStreetMap, you can just Google it, look it up, click the link and just explore that. If you want to actually contribute to mapping, let's say a school, a healthcare facility, a green space, then all you have to do is use your email and create an account. It's pretty straightforward. And so once you log in and you with your email, that's when you can actually start either contributing to mapping something or perhaps finding more detailed information about something that has already been mapped. So I'm going to, so either you can, let's say, like zoom in. So kind of, maybe you're not really sure like what you're looking for, but you have a sense of like what area you want to focus on. So you can like manually just zoom in. But if you know exactly perhaps what you're looking for, or if you want to see whether or not something has been mapped, I can search for that, and then it's suggesting a location. This is what I'm looking for. So as you see, it'll highlight the basically boundaries of that location, and it'll give me all the information that users have added or tagged in mapping this location or submitting their input on this location. So let's pretend that this hasn't been mapped already, and that's something that I want to do. So all you do is you would just click on the edit button, and I'm just providing a very brief and simple overview. There's a lot of, I think we've incorporated links in Google Classroom where you can explore a lot of this in more detail, but you can basically, similar to what we saw in Survey 123, you can either map an area or a line, perhaps it's like a road, so that's all you need, or maybe a point is just a location. And kind of the drawing a polygon or defining the area isn't as important. So I would say these are kind of pretty straightforward. With an area, all you do is you kind of start and you click on all the different like corners, and you start, you'll see kind of this section highlighted. And then once you click on the last point, I just click enter. And as you see, it highlights the area that I've selected. And then because this has already been mapped, the building isn't like showing up, but basically I can come in here and fill out all these different fields. So what's the name? What type of, location is it? I can add additional tags if I want to include very specific information about it. So these are all things that you can do. And if you're not interested in perhaps mapping anything yourself and you just want to utilize the data points that have been mapped by, fellow community members or thousands of mappers around the world, then you can just access kind of the OSM database and use that. And I know you can find this through the Living Atlas as well. So they do have various OSM layers where you can find the data layers with different types of georeferenced data points that you could use for your project. So either you can contribute or perhaps encourage your community to contribute to mapping something if that hasn't already been mapped, or you can take advantage of the data that's already been collected and use that for your project. So this is kind of a crowdsourcing method to collect data. So you're engaging, you'll probably hear terms like citizen science, citizen generated data, community engagement, participatory mapping. So this is when you get local members of a community involved in collecting data. And so I think there are a lot of discussions about how this data can or cannot be utilized for either monitoring the SDGs or reporting on the SDGs. So last week, I was at the UN for a 3-day meeting on citizen science and citizen-generated data and how governments can potentially use that for monitoring and measuring the SDGs. So it's a very important topic. It could provide a lot of valuable insight on information and data that perhaps is not available publicly, and it also allows for an opportunity for knowledge exchange and knowledge transmission. So it's a, I would say perhaps the hot topic, an important topic. And you can read a lot about it if you just look up citizen science or citizen generated data. And learn about perhaps other projects where they are utilizing these types of platforms to collect information. So I think I'll stop here. I know we have a couple of minutes left, and I think Hayan had some announcements that she wanted to share with you all.
Sure. Thanks,
Okay.
Mariam.
Yeah.
And thanks, Anela. Hi, everyone. Just a little bit on the kind of the housekeeping end, and I know Crow has been, thank you, Crow, for troubleshooting some of the questions related to Google Classroom, but we just wanted to check in at this point and see if you can just use your like little show of hands or in the like the reaction icon if you're having trouble accessing Google Classroom still. If you are, it may be an issue with the actual email that you're using. So you may have to just create a new email, specifically Gmail, a Gmail account that might troubleshoot it. We just wanted to check in on that. But I'm glad to see it looks like most everyone already has access, which is great. And you might notice each week we're putting up a post where it's kind of an open question. So you can comment on things that maybe you didn't get a chance to say during the session because time was running out, but you would like to share. It's not a full discussion board, but it has a function of one. So you can just, post and you'll see a little link that said question of the week if you under each week. So please feel free to use that space if you want to keep some discussions going with your peers, additional just thoughts and comments. And then I see a hand from Shreyan.
Oh, that was a mistake. It was from before, sorry.
Oh, okay, no worries, no worries. So yeah, please do use that space and we'll be checking it on that. But yeah, I'm glad that it doesn't seem like it's a problem for most of you. So thanks Crow for troubleshooting that. So for those of you who have kind of reached out to us individually, we'll get back to you. And so, yeah, I think that's it for the session. Thank you, Anela. Thanks, Mariam. And next week, for the Monday, same time, Monday session, we have, wait, am I getting my dates correctly? Yes, we're going to be having our a professor from the Lamont Doherty Earth Observatory, where he works on microplastics research. So and I know some of you had asked in the last session, what are some of the new technologies and solutions that are upcoming and taking place right now to address the microplastics issue. So he'll be sharing some of his research as well as just the overall like global trends in microplastics. So please do join on Monday. And then Wednesday we'll be back to our data session. So bringing all the pieces together as each week. So that's and Anela, did you have anything else?
No, that's it.
Can I jump in real quick and just remind everyone, if you do want to participate in the virtual office hours on Thursday, please let us know by Monday so that we can set everything up and have time to review your questions ahead of time. So that's all.
Great, thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
See
you.
Monday.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye.
Thank you.